Here we go. We are back. MSTR True North, episode 22, Liberation Day Chess. Here we go. We are going to get after it. All righty. Episode 22. Okay, a lot going on in the market. A lot of things cooking. The entire team has been working incredibly hard. We've got a lot of things in the works that we're excited to tell you guys about today and in the future. I think we're all while there's been this solidation in the Bitcoin market and a bunch of uncertainty with tariffs and what's going on in the macro landscape, it's provided a lot of opportunity for our team to look inward and have an opportunity to build. And we're all building some really cool things as a team, as a group, individually and separately, and really thankful for some consolidation in the market because it allowed us to have this opportunity to build and kind of create an even larger moat. So we're excited for the future and we're excited to be here, excited to talk to you guys about it. So agenda for today, we are going to talk about Strategy World and MSTR True North World, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks in the beginning of May. We'll go over MSTR leverage and stats update. We will talk about the MSTR True North website. Maybe we'll do that first as well. S&P 500 update and chase, what's going on there? Soleil versus MSTY, and intertwined through this whole thing, we'll have Dan Hillary jump in. He's got some statistics on what's going on with the Strife and Strike products. We've got the Strike ATM that was, I think it was about 18 million that was issued over the last week. We've got, a couple hundred, was it 700 million of the MSTR ATM that was issued in the last week? Maybe it was $1 billion. I think it might have been even more than that. So we've got some statistics on that. We'll run through that. And at the end, we'll walk through what our thoughts are on GameStop, some tariffs, converts, Thai earthquake, Metaplanet 0% ordinary bonds, green shoes, etc. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Tim. Please give us the not financial advice.
All right. Good evening. Thanks, Jeff. And the website that you're about to be told about may be amazing, but it doesn't contain any financial advice. The stream tonight is for informational and educational purposes only. Back over to you, Punter.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tim. And we do have a new member on the team here. We've got Dan Real Trollstein down in the bottom right-hand corner. Dan has helped build this beautiful MSTR True North website that we are going to show you here shortly. Somehow in this entire process, we somehow missed the .com domain of MSTR True North. So if somebody is watching and has the .com domain, please reach out to me and let's have a conversation because somebody lucked out. And snag that one. I could have swore somebody on our team grabbed that in one of our internal calls, but I guess not. We've got 1,000 other domains, but that wasn't one of them. So maybe we'll kick it over to Grain and Dan, maybe give a run through of the website, what we've got going on. And while you pull that up, I'll give everybody a quick background of what we're working on here. So, somebody made this tweet the other day and it was really funny. I started with a $10 microphone. I had my, Apple earbuds, and here I am almost a year later. I've got upgraded microphone and potentially I'm on stage with Sailor here in May, along with Tim and Ben. So we've got a really strong community that's continuing to build and grow here. And there's a lot of opportunity to build this brand as a business and put a lot of this energy back into the MSTR community and give us more time and energy to do more research and dig deeper and deeper and provide more information to the community on a broad scale. So Grain, I think you put it out really well. This is our goal. Our aim is to make this a bit of a Barstool Sports of finance, basically. We might not be as funny, but we're bright. We're really bright. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to you, Grain and Dan, to go over the website.
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of traveling. We've gone to a lot of events, and Tim has had this huge rise in terms of building these podcast channels. Obviously, MSTR True North, we're doing this weekly on Wednesdays, and we really had to put this together and turn it into a business. So the idea behind this was we should get a website going, and we know that a lot of people are going to Strategy World in Orlando. We thought, wow, it would be great if we could do our own event there. So we were able to secure space there. at the same exact place where Strategy World is occurring. So this is a separate event. There are two separate events. And with that, we were able to get a conference room. So we do have a hard limit on 100 people, but we can only sell 75 tickets. We're down to 69 tickets already. And so from that perspective, we have this great conference planned. We have an agenda posted. It's on mstrtruenorth.org. So you can see the agenda there. You could actually purchase a ticket for it. The ticket will also get you to the party, which will take place after the Strategy World party, which is on Monday. So if you were going to Strategy World, that party is from 5 to 7. Our party is from 7 to 9. But we have a full conference scheduled starting in the morning until 4 o'clock. So we wanted to invite everybody there. People ask, how do you get involved with our group? Or they reach out to me and they're like, how does somebody ever work with me? And a good example of this is Dan at Real Trollstein. He reached out to me a few months ago and I said, and we had a quick phone call. We talked about the market, where we see it going. And he said that he's really good at a whole bunch of different things. He's actually started up companies and he's a tech guy. And I'm like, wow. And then I'm like, can we put together a website and do it quickly? And he's like, I could code it. And then basically that's where we were. And he did a grind for the past 5 days. I don't know how many hours he worked per day to do this. And everybody on the team was editing this in real time, putting together the agenda, securing the space, getting this all planned out. It took a lot of work. And Dan, why don't you give us a quick overview on what you did?
Sure. Do you want me to share here, Jeff?
Yeah,
you can
share would be great. I could share as well if you want me to.
Yeah, maybe I'll just walk through here. All right, let me know when it's up.
There you go. Beautiful.
Sweet. So yeah, this is the site. We'll call this a beta here. Just as Green said, it was a quick scramble here to get it live in the last couple of days. Worked all weekend. Started at what was just going to be a link tree, linking to all the guys on the team and some various events. We decided to turn it into a full-blown site. So here you can see all the guys on the crew, latest episodes. We do have a newsletter sign up here. Where free newsletter, we'll just ping you on new events and various alpha and whatever we've got going on.
So real quick on that, Dan. Yeah. So
Yep.
our plan is to put out a newsletter. This will be a new product that we will be delivering to the market. This will be separate from Twitter. So if you're interested in staying up to date with what we're doing and what we're interested in, we will be putting out some content via the newsletter there. So please reach out, put your email address in there, sign up, and we'll blast that out.
Yep, absolutely. We got our fun tickers down here too. Hopefully adding a bunch more as we get more Bitcoin treasuries rolling in the S&P. About us here, again, mission, vision, some press you might not know about. These guys have been featured all over the place. We're going to keep collecting those and just have one single repository for everything. We've also got a full episode library here. So all 21, soon to be 22 after tonight episodes. We've also got some other features, Bitcoin Treasury podcast. We've got the hurdle rate, which they just put out their second episode today. So make sure you check that out. And then we've got this great interview with Sailor, of course. And then
Hey, Dan, can you scroll up for a second?
Sure.
One of the feedback that we get all the time is even for our spaces, when you post them, they're really hard to find spaces on X. So while Dan was able to get this he had to scroll through to find all of the spaces to have this link repository. So if you ever want to go back to a space, it's there. And what we're probably going to do in the future is we'll have separate tabs for each person. So like the spaces that I've done, we'll link to the spaces that I've done. And then there'll be a brief summary of what was discussed on it. And so you can always go back to any of these and it shows a history of what we've done over time. So while this looks really easy to do on the website, what's happening is that this was actually quite hard to do in practice. And so some of this has to be updated manually. It's not updated automatically. So it took a huge amount of work to do that. So thank you, Dan. Keep on rolling through it.
Yep, I just clicked into the last episode here, so you can see play it right there. It's embedded on YouTube if you prefer that. Otherwise, you can click view on X and it'll just pull right up to that post. We've got timestamps, highlights. They're not linked into the videos, but you can just see what was discussed about on those. We've also got an events and resources tab. Green mentioned the event. Jeff did as well. So you can find out more info here. $100 a ticket. We've got a link to Strategy World there if you need a ticket. Otherwise, the event's right here. click. We'll pull it up in real time. We've got 62, so it's 69 as of 2 minutes ago. So we're rolling in. We'll get this.
So let me chime in on this. So
Yeah.
on this, folks,
Just keep
we
refreshing.
do have a hard limit on the number of people that can come to this, and so in order to, we didn't want 150 people to show up, and then we have to turn people away because the room can only hold 100. So that's why there's only 75 tickets for sale, because we have to account for us. There's probably going to be some strategy executives there. So from that perspective, we had to save some of the tickets for us. And that's why there's a limited number of tickets and space. And so we put this together. And by the way, if somebody sees something wrong with the site or has feedback, you could DM myself, you could DM Trollstein about this, Real Trollstein, and you can give us the feedback and we'll make the changes. And and you should always refresh the site, because we're constantly making changes to this and to update all the other events that are going on. So really appreciate the work.
Tonight I got pinged on 3 more events that Tim, Ben, and Jeff are going to be speaking or moderating. So we'll have to throw those in the next couple days here. But yeah, we've also got Bitcoin Vegas. Obviously, we got the crew there.
Real quick, Dan, if you could go back to the True North Orlando, just we'll walk through the agenda there, which I think is pretty exciting. So, from 10 to 1, we're going to have a meet and greet. So we'll be hanging out beforehand. So that will be before the keynote. Myself, Ben, Tim, Dan will be giving a keynote address. We'll have a panel discussion, a section talking about options and derivatives, and then have some closing remarks, and then a party from 7 to 9 after the 5 to 7 strategy welcome party. So yeah, it'll be a good time. I think we're going to explore a few different topics that we have been doing some research on and haven't published publicly. So we will be planning to record these sessions as well, and then posting to YouTube for those that can't make it and be there.
Yeah, the sessions, we'll throw them back in here in the episode library. We'll build out a section for that as well. So before we scroll on, we'll see. Oh, yep, somebody just bought one. They're going quick, guys.
They're going quick.
So then we've got a sponsor section here. Just some quick stats. This was after the 21st episode. Just pulled a little napkin math, taking the average viewership, which obviously has gone up over time, especially if Sailor retweets it. Sailor, if you're there, retweet it. So we've got over 1 million views in 21 episodes. So we'll break that tonight for sure. Unique monthly viewers, we've got about 90,000 in our estimates. Over 210,000 average views per month, and over 30 hours of content so far. So we do have this available. We're just building it out. We're gonna have some different packages available just to help these guys travel expenses. There's a lot that goes into this, and that it's been given back to the community. So it's a great opportunity to amplify your brand in the space with this growing audience as well. So we've got a lead form there if anyone's interested. Again, pretty preliminary. This is just the beta, but we've had some interest already, so that's why we launched that. And then just a general contact form if you want to reach out about content topics, speaking opportunities, sponsor requests, anything else. Feel free to reach out there.
Please note, do not ask us for financial advice in there.
Correct.
we will not give you financial advice, and we'll even bring Tim in to tell you that I cannot give you this financial advice.
Yeah. Okay. Now Tim can read the whole disclaimer page. You'll find it.
Yeah. Perfect. We got a disclaimer page.
Yeah. No affiliation. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of comments come up about the merch. So I want you folks to reach out to us and tell us what kind of merch you want. Do you want hoodies? Do you want insulated mugs or coffee cups? Whatever you think that would be really cool. Please let us know.
Yeah, feedback is appreciated.
Feedback is appreciated. Go ahead.
Say too, Ark Invest, they've got a great swag store, so we're thinking about something like this as well on the site. So we're looking into a couple options, but plan to launch something like this pretty soon.
Yeah, but we're gonna whoop Ark's ass.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna whoop Ark's ass.
They've got
Bitcoin. They've got Bitcoin, but they're playing around in different sandboxes. That
correct.
Yeah, we're gonna whoop some ass over there. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Dan. I mean, tremendous amount of work has been going into this, and it's not just Dan. We've got other partners that are working behind the scenes, getting this stuff put together. And like I said, we've got business components of MSTR True North that are developing and expanding over time. I think looking back on this time, I think people will be surprised on how much we've built in a very short amount of time. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Grok because it is accelerating how fast we're moving on some of this stuff. So AI is happening. We're here, and yeah, cool. Good deal. Anything else to add, Grain, Strategy World, or MST or True North World, anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's great. If you guys want to come and meet us all at one spot, these are pretty rare events. They'll probably happen where we're all in the same place at the same time. I think that'll probably only happen once or twice a year, and that's where you get a chance to meet us all and talk to us in person. And then anybody that comes there can actually see if I'm a real person and what I look like. So I'm looking forward to meeting everybody that shows up there. I think it'll be great, and I think we're going to have a really good party. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the followers that come there. We'll do our best to record and post, and we're building this as it goes. So again, thank you, Dan. We really appreciate that, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, and just one more thing, we're down to 55. I just refreshed. So
there we
shout out
go.
to Donald. He was our last one.
I'll chime in on this. If we sell out all these tickets, I have no problem going back to a particular place, the hotel, to see if we can get a bigger space. So I want you guys to think about that. If we sell this out, I will go see what I could do to get a bigger space.
Yeah.
I can't promise it, but that's what I'll do.
And I suspect this is going to be the first event of many future events as well. I think there's a possibility in the future we may have our own separate event, at a different point in time down the road. So this is really a proof of concept. Are trying to get a sense of what is out there, what does the community want, and we appreciate your feedback on all of this stuff. So thank you for the support, and we are looking forward to it. Somebody did ask if we're going to be at the Bitwise event. I think a few of us are going to be at the Bitwise event at the end of April. That'll be in New York City. That is also on the True North website. So it's on the events and the resources, and some of the information is there as well.
I think most of us will be at the Bitwise event. I'll be there. So
yeah, it's pretty limited in the number of tickets that they've issued as well. So I think there's a few tickets left, but I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, I do want to make one chime in on that. So that's on April 24th, which is a Thursday. Most of us have to fly in the night before, so there could be an impromptu meeting at a bar in Manhattan, not far from there, and that may get posted. So if you're local to New York City, please be aware that if we can secure a bar on the night before, we could have a meetup, and we'll see what we can do to get the bar secured. Hopefully we could do it for no admission charge, and just fill the bar with people. The last time I was in New York for, was at the Digital Asset Summit, or sorry, Bitcoin Investor Week.
Yeah, Bitcoin Investor Week.
And I had a meetup, and over 20 people showed up, and I bought drinks for 2 hours, and then the bar closed down. So it was a great little impromptu meetup. So think about that, folks.
Yeah. I don't think we'll have a hard time finding a bar in New York.
To be the easy part,
but that's okay. We'll find a bar. We'll find a bar that will have drinks, and we'll meet you there. So yeah, looking forward to it. All right, shall we get into some nitty gritty, some data, some nerdy stuff? Get away from I guess all of this is nerdy stuff. We're building websites for fun, for God's sakes. Yeah, let's get into some data. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll pop into some leverage statistics and give an update on the recent Bitcoin buy, which has taken Strategy to 528,000 Bitcoin held. So, at the end of last week, they're at 506,000. Now they're at 528,000, something like 22,000 Bitcoin purchased in a week, which is incredible. Within that Bitcoin purchase, what was it? 1.2 billion worth of that was from MSTR stock that was sold in the last week. 18.52 million was Strike stock, and 711 million was Strife stock, the Strife initial IPO issuance. So big Bitcoin buy here in the last week, bringing them up to 528,000. So as of, hold on, what is the Bitcoin price right now? It is about 83,000, 83,500. Maybe we'll give this a little update, 83,500. So Strategy's assets, again, are at 44 billion. So they've got another week. Assets are worth 44 billion. The debt, not including the preferred stock, is at 8.2 billion. Preferred stock is at 1.6 billion. Yeah, 1.6 billion. And the estimated composite interest rate you can see down here. And so the leverage ratio is relatively flat with last week, given that the price of Bitcoin has fallen since last week when we did the show. And leverage ratio is at 18.6%, or if you're taking the 4 years of the preferred dividend into consideration, it's somewhere around 20%. Now, on a pro forma basis, one thing that needs to be taken into consideration is that a lot of the debt is convertible debt. So that convertible debt, a majority of that convertible debt is currently trading in the money. So that means it can convert into equity shares and thus be wiped off of the balance sheet slate. So net of the convertible debt that is currently trading in the money, the debt would be 5.59 billion, which brings them to a pro forma leverage ratio of around 11.5 to 12.8%. So still incredibly delevered, despite seeing all this volatility in the markets with tariffs and everything that's happening with just the macro landscape. It seems like Bitcoin is holding up incredibly well, roughly 83,000, and the strategy's leverage ratio is still incredibly low relative to where their target is between 20 and 30%. Dan, it might make sense to jump over to some year to data. I think that's relevant at the moment.
Cool. Yeah. It's just kind of expanding on what you just mentioned, Jeff. You mind if I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Let me look at this. All right. I have some scribbles here to kind of visualize what's going on with this ATM. And so this is last week, March 24th through the 28th. Can you guys see this? All right.
Yep.
Cool.
Looks great.
And this is just what Jeff said already, the Strife IPO, the Strike ATM, and the common stock issuance. And that common stock was at 4% of the weekly traded volume. So that was pretty on point with what we were seeing during November, right? We saw like kind of anywhere between 2 and 7% of the weekly volume was issued as common stock. And we saw positive price movements in MSTR last week. And I can guarantee you no one's complaining about the ATM right now. So I think it's great they're raising this much capital and it goes to show you how resilient the stock is behaving. I think we've definitely seen kind of a tone shift in the way that premium's expanding now, much like it was in September relative to the cat shit wrapped in dog shit it's felt like over the past 3 months. So, on top of that, I think the next thing is the capital stack. So it's like, okay, how is MicroStrategy collateralizing their Bitcoin? And so I think the first point to mention is that the convertible notes are the top of the capital stack. In the case of liquidation, those debt holders get paid out first, and that's about 8 billion, right? And they, as Jeff said, they have about 44 billion worth of Bitcoin. So next in priority on that capital stack, senior to the STRK, is the STRF. And while right now there's only about you can look on the strategy page, but if you multiply the number of Strife shares by their liquidation preference, this represents kind of a claim over the Bitcoin held by MicroStrategy. That's 850 million. And I think on the strategy website, they call that, what do they call that? They call it, let's look here, notional value, right? So that's notional value of STRF. And then we'll see notional value of STRK there, which is junior to STRF. And then there's the rest of the Bitcoin. And so I think that's really interesting because it's like, one, how are we understanding multiple to net asset value? Are STRF and STRK, are they liabilities, which they aren't, right? Do they mean that as a Class A common shareholder, you have less of a claim under the assets of the company? Like what Josh Mandel says, owning an equity is owning a call option on the assets of the corporation minus the debt. So I'm kind of curious what you guys think. Like, how are you viewing this kind of this evolving capital structure, and what do you think about it?
I mean, the capital structure itself and the corporate balance sheet, to your point, Dan, is what allows this entire thing to work, right? So you've got this incredibly volatile asset being Bitcoin, and Strategy is able to transform their balance sheet by using that positioning as collateral, right? Like the convertible debt market knows that they're senior, so they say, okay, I know I'm senior. So what needs to happen in order for me to lose money to the downside on this debt position that I'm taking, right? So when you're underwriting that product and you give Strategy $1 billion, and you're more senior to Strife, you're more senior to Strife, Strike and the common stock shareholder, you start to conceptualize like, what are the downside scenarios here in which I don't get my money back? And that's how you would underwrite this deal. And that's why they're getting incredibly low interest rates, right? 0% interest, 55% conversion premium, is because the balance sheet is incredibly deleveraged. And the positioning in the capital stack in the event of a liquidation, the convertible debt holders would get paid first. So then you start to conceptualize, what is a liquidation? Like, at what scenario would this happen in which the strategy would go bankrupt? And you basically conceptualize a black swan scenario in which Bitcoin breaks, right? In which Bitcoin goes to zero for whatever reason. And that would be a scenario to which, all of these things are wiped out, right? Common stocks wipe out, Strike, convertible debt, doesn't matter. The assets are worth zero. So what these underwriters are doing are conceptualizing, what's the probability that Bitcoin goes to zero? And that's probably an incredibly low probabilistic scenario. And that's how they're considering, how all of this works. So, Dan, I honestly forgot what you asked, to be honest. I don't know if I answered it. I just rambled, but that was
No,
what
I mean, that was a really
about.
good, I think that was a good like extension of what I was saying, more like conceptually why does this matter? And it matters to those people pricing those bonds and those holders of the preferred shares, right? Those holders of the preferred shares, largely the pricing of that preferred stock is based on the confidence in the company and the confidence of the continuation of the strategy, and are, collateralized by the assets. So having such a cushion, this $35 billion cushion, as is represented by the Bitcoin price and MicroStrategy's Bitcoin stack as it stands now, means you can invest in these fixed income products with extreme confidence and certainty moving forward. So I think that's a really big deal. And I do think there will continue to manage this ratio. While we understand the debt ratio as the debt, divided by the total Bitcoin, the strategy probably has their own internal guidance as to how large they can allow the preferred shares to eat into this entire capital structure. And that's something I kind of want to talk about in terms of what was going on with the STRK ATM. Does someone want to jump in?
Yeah, before you get into there, I mean, the fact that they're using the common stock ATM and the Strike ATM is just continuing to give them this huge leverage buffer on how much they can potentially leverage their balance sheet into the future. We've been talking about this for the last 6 months, right? Like, the ATM has been incredibly valuable for their ability to leverage. It's building this huge foundational base by which, if the price of Bitcoin goes back to, 100,000, 108,000, Strategy is looking at $60 billion of assets, a number which they've never had before. You're talking about a company that was worth $2 billion 24 months ago, having 60 billion assets in 24 months is just an insane statistic. And that gives them that buffer capability to leverage the balance sheet more. I know some of the commentary that's been floating around X is like, oh, Strategy should launch a stable coin, which is an interesting thought, like an interesting conceptualization exercise, in which case you would offer effectively US dollars, a stable US dollar. You get paid fiat dollars to offer a digital product that's transactable in a digital native ecosystem, and you effectively take the downside risk, but it's backed by the the strong leverage position and the collateral that they've got on their balance sheet. So it's an interesting idea. I think there are probably some lower hanging fruit, but like, this is the exact strategy that Tether is running, and that's the reason they hold, or they bought another 9,000 Bitcoin last week, or they hold something like 80 or 90,000 Bitcoins, which is just an astronomical number, because they're running this ARB model on a strong balance sheet.
And I think this
Jeff,
picture.
Yeah.
Sorry, real
ahead,
quick.
Tim.
Do you know why? Is it Circle that's going public?
Circle, yeah, Circle's going public, which is Coinbase's deal. Yeah.
So I don't want to say anything but positive things, but just think about why they might be going public before interest rates start coming down.
Yeah. So stable coins are really interesting because the stable coins by Tether buy so much US treasuries. that yield whatever 4 or 5%. It's like the most profitable company. It makes more profit than BlackRock. And if you do it on an employee per basis, because what they do is once they've received that cash, they're over collateralized. So stable coins are incredibly interesting and important for the marketplace. But one of the simple things I wanted to talk about, Dan, here is that the converts have expiration dates anywhere from 2028 to 2032. So basically, they go out from now 7 years. And if you could just look that on the strategy site and see that. But if you look at the option chain, it only goes out to December of 2027. So what's cool about the converts that's different is that it gives you an easy way for the institutional investors to get, basically, because they convert, basically gives them this leap for options without buying options. It's not a bespoke offering. What it is the institutionals are buying this and they're getting whatever a 5 or 7 year time frame in this, and it's an easy way for them to. Of course, we talk about how they delta hedge it, but the time frame is great because that's not available on the regular market for options. And I think that that's a simple way to look at this for these converts, the amount of time they have in order to hit the conversion clause.
Yep. Adrian, Mason, anything to add to this narrative here? It's a bit tricky. I mean, these new products, people are starting to wrap their heads around how they fit in their existing portfolios. I myself have bought some Strike and hold it in my HSA as like a cash position. And I'm having conversations with friends and family that are trying to wrap their heads around this thing. I mean, are you guys hearing the same? What's the buzz in your neck of the woods?
Mason, you can go first if you want.
I don't have much to add. I've just been wrapping my head around the implications of these preferred stocks. And I mean, the episode last week with Jesse it's pretty profound when you think about what the bond market represents as a pool of capital, and the pump analogy. And I posted earlier on this year, or last year actually, I posted that Bitcoin is going to eat the bond market. And in hindsight, it's going to be so obvious that Bitcoin is just fundamentally and structurally a better deal right now than bonds. And in the eating analogy, I was like, yeah, STRF is the fork and STRK is the knife. And they're just going to eat so much capital. Yeah. And right now, dinner, like we just set the table, like just like we're setting out
we're pouring wine,
plates. We're pouring wine, and this party's just started.
Yeah. So along those lines, Mason has a good analogy with the dinner plate, but I also like to think of it, like I mentioned, was it last week? Probably last week when Jesse was on, that what Saylor's done is he's putting Bitcoin in the center of traditional finance, and MSTR, Strike, and Stripe are different levers that he's pulling, and he's bringing different individuals into the market for different reasons. And then if you think about the larger implications in terms of the leverage plays that we have on top of it, we also now have ONB through Bitwise. We have the BMAX that's going to give direct exposure to ETF to the convertible notes. There's just so many different levers that are being pulled, and there's so many different players that can be brought to the market for their own various reasons, that I think what Saylor has done is that he's creating an economy of scale around strategy. And I think it's only going to scale up as they're able to, generate yield on the Bitcoin one day, and they're able to go further into the notion of becoming a Bitcoin bank, like many of us have been discussing. So I think that we are in the nascent stages of this economy being built out. And I really think that these different offerings, in hindsight, like Mason said, are going to be seen as rather obvious. And all of the hubbub about people wondering, well, why is this? Why is that? I don't like the fact they have to pay a dividend now. I don't like the fact that they're going to be on the hook for these payouts are going to seem rather quaint in a few years.
Completely agree.
Totally agree. And just to contextualize that, right now, their annual dividend payment on their Strife and Strike outstanding is $155 million a year, right? So and they have 2.6 billion left in the common stock ATM. So if they were to go out and issue another 2 billion of common stock ATM and leave 600 million in the tank just to pay the dividend, that would give them 3 years of runway, or 4 years of runway. So
all the concern about the payout is overdone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really a question. Right?
But
They can
how are
just
they going to
dilute
pay
us
the
all.
dividend?
They'll
Yeah.
just dilute. They'll dilute.
Yeah. Which
Figuratively.
you're fine with, because you're like, cool, I'm taking the long side here. Like Bitcoin's going up forever, and like what would I rather hold right now? And
Completely.
we were talking about that before we got on this call. We're like, thinking about the rest of the market. We're trying to talk about tariffs and pretend like we know what we're talking about. But then you look back and like, what would you rather hold right now? And I'm really having a hard time, looking at the entire world of assets, just with the relative market cap of both of these things, the technological advancements, where the financial market's moving, looking at how capital is coming into the space, the development of the ecosystem, understanding the architecture of existing finance. I mean, there's so many. What's happening right now is there's product market fit, right? There's product market fit. Like all of these products that are being designed and developed here are product market fit for the existing financial ecosystem. It's for your existing, hedge fund managers or pension fund managers, insurance companies, banks, etc. So there's just so much. There's mesh happening, and this strategy is eating from the inside out.
Talking about that
But
food analogy. So I used to work in microbiology, and when you put a bacteria into a broth, it's like putting it into an infinite fuel source. And there's a lag phase that lasts just a few minutes as the bacteria adapts, and then it goes into an exponential growth phase. And that's kind of how I look at strategy. They're like a colony of bacteria right now. They've been placed in an infinite food source. The bond market is 300 trillion, and Saylor says he wants 1% of it. So they're a colony of bacteria. They're probably in the lag phase right now. They haven't even gotten to exponential growth yet. And when they do, like now that they've got all of these, as Jesse said, pumps to basically just spoon feed all of the food into Strategy's mouth, it's the exponential growth is just on the horizon, I think. He gave the 120 IQ version where he said it was like, Strategy's a pump accelerating the natural osmotic process or whatever. And my 80 IQ version is like, Strategy eats bonds and poops Bitcoin.
Yeah. But somebody please clip that up. I mean, there's so many things in there. There's so many AI images you could generate of Strategy spoon feeding, just eating the bond market. Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff.
I'm seeing in the chat that people are asking, will they have to sell Bitcoin to pay for the dividend? No, like Dan just went through, they can issue the ATM to pay out the dividend, and anyone that has concerns about the ability to pay out the dividend, I think it's very, very overdone. They have more than enough capability to pay out the dividends. And someone even asked about what happens if to Bitcoin if war breaks out, a number go up. I just wanted to point that out because I've seen that in several chats. I want to make sure that people understand that Bitcoin is a very, very hard and resilient asset. So don't go thinking that Strategy is going to go under just because some kind of calamity happens in the world.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. War equals printing, right? Like
War equals printing, and also also hard assets go up in war. Look what happened to gold, silver, and bronze in World War I and World War II. If you want a fun experiment to go look through.
Yeah, I mean, it's destruction of war is the destruction of value, right? Like it is just, that's it, right? Like you shoot a gun, boom, those ammo's gone. That money is spent. It's gone. It's like evaporated. It is the destruction of value all around. And that's another thing that we've been trying to conceptualize here is like this risk on versus risk off nature of Bitcoin that we're all kind of wrestling with, or at least maybe the market's wrestling with it. I view it as a risk off asset, but sometimes it trades like a risk on asset. Sometimes it trades like a risk off asset. And to me, it kind of seems like it's trading like that because of where it's at in its evolutionary history, and how much of the supply curve is remaining to be mined over time. But right, like the technology itself is evolving and expanding, and that's why there's this uncertainty. There's this asymmetric information where the people that are early have an understanding of the technology and where this could potentially go, which is why we see it as a risk off asset. But most of the rest of the world sees Bitcoin as a risk on asset. All the crazy people that look at my LinkedIn, think that Bitcoin is a risk on asset and the riskiest part of their portfolio. It's just an interesting development in the asset class itself. Dan, did you want to hit on some other things there? The like relative volume.
Yeah, maybe we just take a break. I know Mason wants to do MSTR IBIT relative. I think that's kind of pertinent.
Yeah,
and then we can talk.
We can do
more
this at
volume.
any time. We could also talk about, Dan, I know you're talking about Bitcoin's connection to QQQ or their correlation.
Oh, that's an
there.
interesting one too. Yeah.
I think Jeff just talked about it, but my thoughts about that is there's a few people I respect, like Jordy Visser. Are you guys familiar with Jordy Visser? He's an ex hedge fund guy, and he's been doing some stuff with Pomp, and he has a really good Substack. Check him out if you haven't. But his thesis for this year is that, well, historically, Bitcoin and QQQ have this correlation where they move together, and I think we're seeing that right now with the volatility in the market around tariffs and et cetera, just general uncertainty. And his thesis is this year, those two things are going to decouple. And his idea for the trade is short Mag 7, long Bitcoin. And I think that's a really interesting notion at this point. But it could take longer, right? Like, we have no idea when that's going to happen and what would be the catalyst for that. Maybe it's just a natural market repricing of Bitcoin, or the view of it as a less of a risk on asset, a risk off asset, like BlackRock and other institutions have been kind of indicating in subtle ways.
I think that in itself would be the biggest catalyst or narrative to Bitcoin's future price growth, other than anything else. If Bitcoin decouples from a leveraged beta QQQ play and starts behaving more like gold, or we see that decoupling continue, which we are seeing right now. Last time the Qs were at 461, Bitcoin was wicking down to 79. After hours trading, we're trading at 458, and we're still at 83.5. So we are outperforming QQQ right now, and if that continues and we continue to outperform the Mag 7, the narrative will become Larry Fink's flight to safety, and I think that will cause more and more capital to flow into the asset. So long as we're leveraged QQQ, I think it really deters a lot of people in terms of just the fear, and it doesn't make. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. They're like, oh, this is a speculative asset. It behaves like risk assets. You can't get your mind around digital gold if it performs like digital meta. So until that happens, I think it's tough to get the money in there.
Dan, you made a tweet earlier today. The dollar is trading like a risk asset. And I thought that was a good perspective as well, right? Like when the thing that you measure the entire world against is volatile in itself in a short time horizon, that also changes your perspective on how things move. And then you think about leverage ratio again, just bringing everything back to this framework that strategy is working within, is this leverage risk analysis and risk assessment, right? You look at strategy, they've got a pro forma leverage ratio of like 12%. And then you look at the US government, which prints your dollars and provides T-bills, and their leverage ratio is 600%. What would it take for either one of those to see a significant destruction in value? Like, which one is going to experience a significant destruction of value first? And my brain tends to think that the US dollar is going to experience that situation first. Is this more of House of Cards effect of an over-leveraged economy, an over-leveraged system that may experience destruction before Bitcoin will?
And I mean, it'll be a sight to see, because I think most of the high frequency traders, most of the, even just the trading houses and hedge funds, I mean, they're trading this thing like a leveraged QQQ. They're trading like a risk asset. And once that really starts to take effect, or once the narrative starts to take effect that this is no longer a risk asset, a speculative asset, I just think it opens the floodgates for amounts of capital that we have.
Blows it open. And what are the stats on, like, you've seen gold's rise of 20% this year? I mean, the amount of money that has had to flow into gold just to increase its 10x market cap from Bitcoin, the amount it has, like, there is plenty of money to move this thing around. It's just we're not seeing it because of the kind of the hair trigger that is risk assets at the moment. Yeah. Going from 15 trillion to 17 trillion is a huge move. Like 20% on the gold market is massive. That is so much capital coming in the door for for such a large asset class like gold. And yeah, I think Bitcoin has the capacity to catch it, right? Like it can and it will store that much value. It has the ability to, like, it has the technological capability to store that much value.
The one
Yeah,
caveat I would
exactly.
give with a notion of short Mag 7 long Bitcoin is that I think that a point that we could consider is that it's more likely that Bitcoin is going to siphon out capital from all the garbage that's in the stock market, and we're going to have a bifurcated economy where you have Mag 7 and Bitcoin and everything else struggling to kind of make it. And I say that because in my day-to-day job, I'm seeing AI slowly but surely decimate departments all across the country, whether it be in hospitals, whether it be in manufacturing, whether it be in just your everyday office jobs, right? That or automation, true automation, not the BS RPA that they had years ago, but really using data into actionable capex savings and automation of the workforce is rapidly accelerating, and I think a lot of people are still coming to terms with that. And if I were a betting man, I would say that the capex that has been put into the Mag 7 and the growth that's come into the Mag 7, we're going to see the real impact of that in the next 2 to 3 years when these language models and robotics and all of these other I would say parallel streams of automation and growth and explosion and advancement start to coalesce into one very, very narrow stream where they're suddenly they're everywhere. And I think it's more likely that things like, all the garbage we have in the stock market in terms of companies that you see trading on multiples that just don't make sense, I think it's more likely that the money goes out of them first because they're going to be the first to have to adopt automation rather than people starting to short the Mag 7 and long in Bitcoin and long in other alternative assets. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that's a caveat we have to consider.
Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah, you know what I want to chime in about that? So I just asked ChatGPT. So the Mag 7 currently makes up 32% of the S&P 500 because it's market cap weighted. So if you can look at previous history, you'll find that typically the S&P 500, the Mag 7 accounts for almost all of its growth in the given past few years. The other 493 typically don't do particularly well. So when you look at that perspective, shorting the best part, the 7 stocks that do the best out of 500, might not be a good idea because of the flows that go into SPY. So think about that. I would prefer to be long Mag 7, and I'd prefer to be long Bitcoin and obviously Strategy and any Bitcoin treasury company. So I'm not a big shorter, but from that perspective, 32%, that's a huge percentage of the S&P 500.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to add on to, right? Is the sad part about that whole comment from you, Adrian, and Grain, is that the losers here are going to be passive investors, right? If you're investing in any of the passive ETFs, like, you're going to lose. You're going to get value just stripped away from you at a faster rate than the cost of capital.
And the other thing that I would also say with why I'm reticent to say short the Mag 7 is that under my desk right now, I have 5 computers that are networked together and I'm training a language model. If
yeah.
I'm doing it,
Hell
if
yeah.
I'm doing it and I'm able to do this in a way that is giving me net results in my day-to-day life, I think people are really going to be surprised in 2 years hence when we have a fully functional, full-scale learning language model on our phones. Once that happens, you're going to start seeing these language models in things like PeopleSoft and interacting with older systems. You're going to see them in new systems like Workday. You're going to see them in systems like Oracle Fusion. And the reason why I'm mentioning these systems is because imagine you are an accountant and you can have a language model that's going through all the accounting data for your company for the last 20 years. You no longer need to do high-level analysis if you can say, tell me all the money that we spent on a Tuesday in the third quarter for the last 5 years, and it gives you an answer like that. That's going to really destabilize the market, and that's why I say I'll be very, very, very reticent to short Mag 7 or anything having to do with AI and robotics or GPUs and all the capex that has gone into that thus far. I think the real result of that is going to be a soft recession, and there are going to be growth opportunities in those stocks that I think will catch many people off guard.
Yeah, all your mid-level, low-level analysts are just gone.
They're fucked.
They're
Isn't
gone.
that what we are,
They're
Jeff?
just- yeah, that's
Aren't
why
we
I'm
all
working on
one
Bitcoin,
analyst on
dude.
Twitter?
I'm out of here. I gotta get out of there.
I just want to say, so the short Mag 7 long Bitcoin, at least in Jordy's view, he comes from the hedge fund world, right? And that short would be the hedge, right? So that just kind of showed it's a representation of the decoupling from QQQ. Just wanted to put that out there because I definitely agree. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen. I think it's really hectic right now, but I like the idea of the decoupling.
I think there will be a decoupling, but one of the things that I just did, again, using AI real quickly, and I'm dating myself. I asked ChatGPT, I said, what was the FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google percentage of the S&P 500 back in 2020? And it came back and it was 16%. So what I did, I get a comment. This is not financial advice, but many people said on Spaces, how did I make a bunch of money? It's like, well, if FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google made up 16% of the S&P 500, and that's 4 stocks, I concentrated on those 4 stocks, and I started doing that a decade ago. And then obviously now we have Magnificent Seven. So if these stocks are accounting for all of the gains of the S&P 500, why buy the rest? And that's what Jeff said, is that the passive investor gets screwed. They're buying SPY through looking for the diversification. It's got 500 stocks in it, but if 493 are dogs, then why buy the dogs? Just buy the good stocks. I mean, it was simple logic that I did 15 years ago. And so that's what I did, is that I was concentrated and bought these stocks instead of buying the rest. Why buy a fund that has stocks that are not performing? And then that's where you get back to market cap weighted. And then somebody always says, well, what about the equal cap weighted? I don't care. It doesn't make it any better. So mathematically, that's it. And I'm on the same camp there with Adrian. If he's got a large language model underneath his desk and he's using tech, and I'm using ChatGPT in real time, and I'm paying for the premium versions of it, if they come out with a better version, I'll probably add another $5-10 a month to it, because it makes pulling up stats that fast and quick.
Well, someone said is asking in the chat, how will Strategy's AI software play into this? I think that I'm one of the few people that thinks they can scale their business analytics platform, and I say that for a few reasons. So one of the things I do day to day is I take data from dozens and dozens of systems, I consolidate it down into clean, actionable data, and then I help clients import that data into new systems and use that data in different ways, right? Think of me as Palantir, but on a small scale. That's what I do day to day. That's where Strategy, I think, is going to find ways to scale their business model. A lot of the systems that exist right now on the back end are very green screen. I'm seeing companies still using AS400 and Fortran. So what can they do to adopt their systems and advance their systems? They have to get the data out of those systems, clean it, structure it, provide actual data from it, then get into these new systems that they can then scale up, right? There's no real clean way to do that right now. There's no tools that exist to do that cleanly. I develop those tools. I use Python, I use other coding languages, I help them scrub that data. If Strategy gets a foothold in that, they have an entirely new vertical that can last the next 10 to 15 years. Because mark my words, the real challenge for companies adopting AI isn't the AI itself. It's the fact that they don't have usable data that they can have actual data and insights on that would make the AI give them the ROI that they're looking for. That is the gap that exists right now in the market. If Strategy gets a foothold in that gap, which I think they can, and which I think that they're looking at, that's how they scale their business, and they can go up 5-10x just on that, because I myself juggle 2, 3, sometimes 4 clients at a time. And other data specialists in the market, they're doing the same thing. We're making hay right now. And that is where Strategy can make hay. They don't need to compete with Snowflake and Palantir and all these other companies. They can go very small to mid-size and make a killing.
Yeah, and I want to chime in. I mean, this AI part, we're getting questions about, can't you just do an Excel spreadsheet? So what Adrian talked about is that he'll write Python and he'll build this underneath his desk and he'll code this and I'll do this. Now, for the people that don't code but that can use Excel, if you take structured data in Excel and you have your columns and your rows set up, you could paste that. You just take a screenshot of it, paste it into AI, and you say analyze it, and it does it for you in 5 seconds. You didn't write any code, you pasted it in there and you say analyze it. You could take, if somebody posts their portfolio to X, you could take that image, paste it into AI and say, what's the probabilistic outcome that these trades in 3 years are gonna win? I didn't write any code. I'm using this and I just paste the image in. And somebody's like, well, did you write an Excel spreadsheet? I'm like, nah, I just took the data that I had that's in a structured format, and I told it to analyze it. And then I keep on iterating on those questions in order to see if it fits my preconceived notion, assuming that ChatGPT is non-biased, or the same thing with Grok, and then play both of them off of each other. So you don't have to write code. If you do write code, you'll be that much farther ahead. And what Adrian is saying about strategy is that this is moving incredibly fast. So
Oh, yeah.
I think that everybody should learn to use AI. You don't have to code, learn to paste images into it, learn to ask the right questions, and see if it comes back with information that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thinking about large, large language models and data analysis using AI, what was the, I mean, think about just the 23andMe going bankrupt, right? So now you have all of this DNA data, right? Which is just code. You have huge databases of DNA code that is probably incredibly valuable to somebody that maybe wants to run a life insurance company and understand how to price risk on somebody's DNA and how long they're going to live relative to the DNA swabs that they got, or whatever that may be. So I mean, the world is going to get more complex, and AI is going to get just integrated in all of these all of these places. As I mean, I don't think Donald Trump said it. I don't think he could have said it any better, right? Everything's computer, right? Like everything's computer. Like the future, everything's going to be computer. Like anything you want to do, it's going to be computer. So anyway,
Adrian,
Yeah.
when is there going to be like an intuitive user interface where somebody who doesn't code, like myself, is just going to be able to open up the app and say, I want to train a model, and I want to train AI models, and it's just going to hold my hand through that?
Oh, well, that's a two-part question. The capability to do that, I think, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. But then you have, and I say this as delicately as possible, user limitation. So it's not just going to be a matter of holding your hand. You have to have some conceptual knowledge of what you want to do, and you have to be able to plan that out. So that is going to take a much longer time. So for someone that's a developer, in 3 to 5 years, I think a developer is going to be able to just go into a interface of some sort, whatever would be at that time, and use language models to build out an entire platform to do what they need it to do. But that's because the developer has that systems knowledge and that understanding. Now, someone again in the chat said, well, how would strategy get a foothold in this kind of stuff when you already have Snowflake and other AI companies that are doing it? The problem with that is it's still actionable data. You need to get the data to a point that those companies can use it, and those companies are going to charge you an arm and a leg to get your data cleaned for you.
cleaning.
Then they're going to charge you to use their AI platforms. What I'm proposing is that strategy as a business intelligence company is going to find their foothold in that data portion and stay in that data portion. They're going to be cleaning data, structuring data, helping you get your data into actual insights at a level much, much smaller than Snowflake or Palantir, right? They're not trying to compete with those companies. They're trying to help small to mid-sized zombie companies, if you will, get on board with AI and find ways to survive into the future. I think that's where they can have a foothold. But Neethu, your question is, for instance, with what I'm doing is to train something like Llama, for instance, the full $70+ billion parameter system, you need a lot of VRAM, and I'm getting really complicated here, so I'm going to slow down.
Qubits, hit us. Come on.
So
Bring it back.
essentially what I'm doing is I'm creating a virtual environment that can handle the parameters for the model, right? The full parameters for the model. And then I can play around and figure out different ways to use that to streamline my workflows. What I do with clients is very, very similar. I'm helping their development team implement something as simple as ChatGPT or Claude or even Gemini into their workflows in a way that is industry safe, that's going to keep their data safe, so on and so on and so forth. So what you're talking about, I see in 3 to 5 years. In 10 years, when we have full scale models woven into our tablets, our computers, our phones, where it's going to start learning from you. So it's going to know that on a Tuesday, you usually get munchies for Chipotle. It's going to start tracking that kind of stuff. Then it's also going to see that it can do your taxes for you. It can help you streamline your finances. You're going to basically have something handhold you through life. It's not just going to be handholding you through working on data. And that is where things get really scary, because then they become true commodities. And then you have to think about in terms of how many GPUs is that going to need? Then you have to think about it in terms of what is that going to do for the US dollar? Is it going to slam everything down because the cost of production becomes negligible? How does Bitcoin survive in that kind of environment? There's so many questions that come into it when you start thinking about those things.
So if I failed your quantum exam lecture, then I just shouldn't be worried about training AI models yet.
Not yet. I don't think the end user, which would be you, is ever going to have to worry about training the AI models. I think the AIs are going to be so ubiquitous that we're going to have specialized models, and then we're going to have generalized models. The generalized models will sit on top of the specialized models. So if you are in med school, for instance, you'll have a specialized med school model that will that'll know everything from organic chemistry to anesthesiology. And then you'll have a generalized model on top of that that's helping you interact with that specialized model. And that's going to really speed up the learning process, because do you really need to know a textbook pillar to post? No, you just need to know the details, and then you're going to learn everything on the job for something like medicine. And it pretty much holds true for everything. It could hold true for architecture. It can hold true for law. It can hold true for medicine. It can hold true for many, many industries.
So Adrian is our chief technical AI vertical partner of MSTR True North, and I think that will come out in our future newsletter. So Adrian, I appreciate your perspective. Always blows us away. I can't believe you have 5 computers under your desk. It's probably pretty hot. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually why I have a giant fan in the corner, and that's why I only run them like 3 hours a day, because it gets ridiculous in here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe move to cold climate, and then you're set. Okay. Real quick, we've got so we're an hour in here. We're gonna do a quick promo on MSTR True North World, which is on Monday of Strategy World. And for those that are just now popping in or tuning in, we are having MSTR True North World. This is Monday, May 5th. We are going to have an agenda that starts at 10 to 12 is networking, and then we'll have programming from 1 to 4:30. Tickets are $100, and there are only 47 remaining. When we started the stream, we had 75 tickets, and you've already wiped off a third of them. So yeah, there's only a few left. So we look forward to seeing you guys there. And that was this brief intermission. Thank you. Cool.
Do you mind if we talk how Strife Strike ATM allows us to buy the dips here?
Hell
Because
yeah.
I know Checkmatey has been criticizing Saylor for not buying all the bottoms. I mean, I just want to put it out there how ridiculous that statement is. Like, why doesn't Saylor buy the bottoms? Okay, so if you could time every bottom and sell every top, you would be operating a hedge fund that managed billions of dollars, and you would be infinitely wealthy. Like, it would just be that easy. So that's completely ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Right, it's a completely ridiculous statement. But okay, so why doesn't he?
If he just hires the right analyst, though, he just needs the right analyst.
That's a good point. Yeah, but so it's a ridiculous statement in my opinion. But I think the point is, though, but I do see where he's coming from. Like, to play devil's advocate here, obviously November was a very euphoric time, both in Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. Okay, and Saylor's buying a lot of Bitcoin, right? That's because he had access to that capital, and he's very forward in saying, like, I tap the capital markets when they become available. And so the thing with the common stock ATM is that when common stock is available, there's a high premium. Bitcoin tends to be running, and there's a lot of buying pressure all around in MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. So you get a higher cost basis on the Bitcoin. But the cool thing about the Strike ATM and the Strife ATM is that the pricing on those preferred shares is more based on kind of the credit worthiness of MicroStrategy and the current interest rates environment, right? And the forward-looking interest rates. So the pricing is not necessarily based on it's supply and demand, but it's less so supply and demand relative to the Class A. So, for example, last week when MicroStrategy bought or used 18.5 or 18 million worth of Strike ATM, that represented about 17% of the weekly traded Strike volume, right? So again, Strike traded all of the Strike trading volume last week. 17% of that was represented by ATM new issuance and Strike, and the price didn't tank. The price stayed where it was because, again, it's priced differently. And I think that'll be really, really important and opportune during kind of sideways periods of time. So long as MicroStrategy continues to manage the leverage ratio, they can issue these preferred shares during during down markets, and during kind of lower Bitcoin prices. And I think that's a huge, huge advantage here. And it kind of answers that question that people have been wanting to criticize strategy for. So, you can issue them. Again, it's not based on the supply and demand dynamics of the preferred shares. It's just based on the creditworthiness of the company, which is something, strategy is always managing. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Saylor's not trading. He's not a trader. So he's interested in buying as much Bitcoin as humanly possible. And he's interested in doing that as a variety of ways as possible. So a lot of the criticism that people are giving him for timing his buys, it just doesn't make sense to me. And to your point, if someone could effectively time the market, they would be infinitely wealthy because they'll be able to do it over and over and over again. So I think a lot of this conversation around timing the market is just confirmation bias, that people are kind of scaling up just a little bit too much. Because if someone successfully times the market, I ask them to do it again, then I ask them to do it again, then again. You can't. So I think that what Saylor is doing is that he is trying to effectively get as much Bitcoin as possible, as quickly as possible, because what he's doing is he's front running the transition over to Bitcoin, right? He doesn't really care whether he buys at 85, 95, or 105. It is a longer term view. And the contradiction to that is, well, buying at 85 at scale with billions of dollars is a really big difference than buying at 95. It's like, yeah, true. But if he had waited and said, okay, the price is going to go lower, then it rips to 101, you'd rip him for that too. So he's in a no-win situation when it comes to this whole timing the market thing, which is why I think he just has tunnel vision and he's just looking forward and trying to buy Bitcoin as much as possible.
Yeah, really good point. And I think it answers a lot of some of the worries I've had and some of the things we've seen in the past. Is like, especially during kind of the summer or 2023, early 2023, when the vol's down, when the volatility is down, Bitcoin's kind of trading flat and the multiple is low, right? Like 1, 1.4, 1.5. The ATM common stock isn't as accretive. And but those periods, if you're a Bitcoin believer, you believe Bitcoin will continue to rally and that sort of force in the asset will be reinvigorated, that performance. And so I think during those periods of time, if we see them again, this ATM option is a complete game changer, and really forces us not to worry too much about that multiple or the accretive nature of the ATM. You can use this to acquire Bitcoin at very opportune times, in my opinion.
Yeah, two things. Like, you can't just spin up a convertible bond in 24 hours. Like, we get a 10% dip. Like, okay, yeah, I'll just magically make this convertible bond deal appear out of thin air. And then the other thing, I think that's where you were headed, Dan, is if Bitcoin's down 10% and strategy's down 10 or 20, you're going to go to the common shares and sell at the market. People would freak the hell out. Like, there's no way. I mean, they already freak out even when it's accretive. And if they actually tried to sell common stock on a dip, they'd just get eviscerated. And these other levers that they can press when the stock is down is just going to be like that spark that you need to get a fire started.
I think that was really well articulated. Totally agree. Totally agree. And on top of that, you can't issue those when the stock's down. You can't issue the ATM as effectively, nor do you have the volatility for the convertible issuance, right? So this is a perfect
Exactly.
band-aid.
Also, he has to go through a few different steps. Saylor is not issuing the ATM equity himself, right? It's not done through a third party.
Correct.
So I think that he cannot just say, I'm going to go to the market right now, issue ATM whenever the hell he feels like it. They have to be somewhat planned about it, even though he's announcing the green dot on a Sunday and they purchased the week before. I'm pretty sure these buys are planned out well in advance, weeks in advance even. Because how else would he do it effectively? He can't just say on a Monday morning, I want to issue some ATM this week and just go do it with a third party, right? He has a lot of hoops to jump through. So I think he's at the mercy of bureaucracy and corporate requirements as much as he's at the mercy of what the price is going to be when he buys.
Yeah, you
I think
nailed it.
then, yeah.
A couple things there. Right. As interest rates come down, the price of Strike and Strife will rise. That will mean that the ATM on those products will also be more accretive because they'd be raising more capital with less technical dilution. So, if interest rates come down, bullish. If the price of the stock comes up, goes up, right? If the price of the stock goes up, Strike will go up, which will be even more accretive when they issue ATM on the Strike product as well. So it's just fascinating how they have this structured. And the Strike product is like self-healing, as you pointed out, Dan, right? I even saw this after hours. I saw the price of Strike drop after hours, and then the next day it just kind of opened back up. It just went right back up to where it was the previous day. So it's interesting to watch how it trades. I think that is the ATM coming into play. Also, somebody said, don't fade Checkmate. I also agree with that, right? Check is one of the best on-chain analysts out there, actually sitting and looking at Bitcoin data, which sounds absolutely exhausting. It's the last thing I want to do. But, somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad that he's out there doing it. Where I do think he misses the nuance here is this MNAV oscillation and what the end game looks like. I'm saying that MNAV will gravitate naturally to 1. And sure, it might gravitate to 1 in the year 2150 when the market cap is 200 trillion and none of us are alive anymore. Maybe the market cap's 1. So there's just so much information arbitrage, information asymmetry, information arbitrage to take advantage of here that I think is getting largely swept under the rug for a fundamental disagreement on what this might look like in the future. So go ahead, Mason. You want to share your screen?
I shared something. So this is can we make it bigger? Yeah. So this is the MicroStrategy priced in IBIT. So it's essentially MicroStrategy Bitcoin ratio. And something that I've noticed recently is that far right square, and it kind of looks like we are beginning to stabilize. It looks similar to the far left purple square, and it could be, we could be going into like a broader expansionary period right now, which is definitely on the table, and that would be the middle square. But I think this is just kind of indicative, the current kind of plateauing in this new region means that the MicroStrategy fundamentally is being repriced by the market at a higher level, and I just think that's a really bullish indication.
Yeah, we're not seeing it go the opposite way. What's the time horizon that we're looking at here? I can't see it because you're
these are months.
A year. So okay, so this is the last like year and a half ish, kind of right before that last blow off top that we saw in March.
It's the launch of IBIT. So June 2024, or no, sorry, January.
This is so indicative. I think I really do think people pile into MSTR as a leverage trade on Bitcoin in the short term, and I really think that's what people are doing here. They're piling into the global liquidity trade on Bitcoin via MSTR. So you just see the pressure on the MSTR relative to IBIT because it has a smaller market cap, and people are trying to get that leverage. That's my take on the whole thing, but we can see.
Well, and they're increasing your Bitcoin per share exposure, right?
Exactly.
Like that's it. It was incredible. I mean, the starting point is interesting here because there was so much FUD that happened in January and February of 24 when IBIT was being launched. People were saying MSTR is dead. You know, Fred Krueger came out and said MSTR is dead. He bought BITO calls and instead of MSTR calls and just got totally wrecked on the whole thing, just missed the whole trade. And they were missing the forest from the trees on like the difference between an equity and ETF. So, yeah, it's crazy. Cool. All right. What's next? What do we got next? I've got S&P 500 talk if we want to talk end of Q1, what that looks like.
Let's
so
do that.
it looks like yeah, we're not going to get S&P inclusion in Q2. So maybe we'll stop sharing my screen, sharing Mason's screen here, and we'll hop over to my screen.
Josh had some comments on that today.
I missed it. What'd he say?
He's just, I know he was he wasn't trading yesterday as was April 1st. So he was in a goofy mood, and he was posting a lot of rocket ships, talking about how it's better to smash the earnings criteria as opposed to sneak by them, as opposed to sneak by them. And so I think that's exciting.
Yeah, that's something that we've, Grain and I have talked about this ad nauseum since May of 24, thinking when strategy was potentially going to adopt FASB early last year, but. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So everything you see on the screen, these are all BTC purchases throughout Q1. So going from January 6th all the way to March 31st. So you can see with the price of Bitcoin at close, the closing price at March 31st was 82,548. So the net loss per Bitcoin transaction is here. So for a total net loss on all of the Bitcoin purchased at $1 billion, about $1 billion. And compared to where Q4 closed, Bitcoin price closed at 93,429. So there's an accounting $4.8 billion loss on the Bitcoin as of the end of the year through Q1. So a total loss on the balance sheet of $5.8 million, which again, we are going to see so much bewilderment on this, right? Like the strategy is going to come out with their earning per share results in May, and there's going to be so much FUD. Peter Schiff's going to be really loud. Jason Calacanis is going to be really loud. He's not going to understand what's happened with the accounting. Almost the bewilderment is going to be extended and probably even more complicated. It might get even more chaotic. So the interesting part here, right? So if you were to take the last 3 quarters sum together, the loss on the balance sheet, again, this is not contemplating. This is not contemplating any of the gain that they captured in 2024. And this is not contemplating any gain that they have on their technology business. So I think this is possibly a little large relative to where the Q1 EPS ends up. But the last 3 quarters summed together on just this technical Bitcoin basis is about $6.8 billion loss. So what does the Bitcoin price need to be at the end of Q2 in order for strategy to have positive earnings per share? And so that exercise here, so you've got 528,185 Bitcoin going into the quarter. Q1 closed at 82,549. And so the Bitcoin price at the end of Q2 needs to be $95,575 in order for strategy to have positive earnings over the last 4 quarters, thus qualifying for S&P 500 in likely Q3. I suspect, if they come up for inclusion in Q3 of 2025, I suspect there's going to be a lot of attention on this. It's going to go to committee. I suspect committee might exclude them in the first go around, just saying, it's too volatile. We don't understand Bitcoin, yada, yada, whatever. But I think that may result in the market just understanding that they have no choice but to include them at some point in the future, and the market may continue to front run that potential inclusion at a future point in time. So then you start to look at what would the earnings per share potentially look like? What would the gain in Q2 look like if Bitcoin goes back to all-time high of 108,000? So if Bitcoin goes back to all-time high of 108,000, you're looking at a net position of a gain, assuming no additional purchases during Q2. You're looking at a gain of $13.4 billion. So a net delta of $6.5 billion blowing out the negative earnings over the last 3 quarters by $6 billion, basically doubling it, which I think would be bullish for S&P 500 inclusion, or at least the conversation and the narrative around S&P 500 inclusion. Dan, kind of going back to Josh's point, right? A blowout. If we just go out to back to all-time highs, there would be a blowout earnings release, right? We're looking at potentially $50 earnings per share, assuming they don't purchase any more Bitcoin in Q2, which if you look at the average PE ratio of the QQQ, you're looking at a price of $1,616 per share, just taking the average PE ratio of QQQ on a single quarter's EPS.
Yeah, no, well taken. I totally agree. I think it'll be pretty massive. And that kind of leads to Josh's, well, I think 2 things that leads to is like, okay, now that let's say we're living in a world in which they are included in the S&P. I know something Josh talks about a lot is their credit worthiness of the company. It's something you talk about too, Jeff. And I'd be curious to hear Salil's point and Tim's point here, but like their credit worthiness goes up, their credit rating goes up. So their ability to get access to capital increases in theory, but I don't have experience with that. I don't really know what that means. So I'm curious so that's all part of the front running narrative as well. So there's just a lot of factors at play here that I think are going to come to a confluence, moving forward.
Yeah, if they're included in the S&P 500, they can get their bonds rated, right? It's a much easier process. So like all of the convertible debt that they've issued right now has been unrated private placement convertible debt. Now, what if you come to the market with an A-rated 2% ordinary bond with no conversion, and it's more senior to everything? It's got a, just incredibly secure, incredibly safe, right? It's likely more safe than a U.S. Treasury, and it's rated by S&P or Moody's or one of these rating agencies, and all of a sudden, that changes your ability to access capital in that market. Yeah, it's impressive. Cool. Adrian, I know. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. I was just saying we could also just talk about. I think at the beginning I wanted to cover a bit, and we did, but I want to continue it. This idea of MNAV is not necessarily being something set in stone, and we saw that, right? We saw this multiple to net asset value happen, kind of expand in the fall, but the S&P is 10 times more. Jeff, you know the size better, but it's 10 times more
larger.
It's 10 times larger and 10 times more meaningful than the Qs in terms of inclusion. So I really do think this multiple, it's not going to be fixed at the multiple that people want to trade it at. Like it's very kind of commonplace, and it's a crowded trade to buy multiple when it goes under 2 and then sell it when it's over 3. But I have a tough time believing that the market, especially as their market cap stays so low relative to that of, Bitcoin's entire market cap, that this multiple won't really see like weird behavior occurring. So I think that there's a real good chance of a blowout this year.
One thing.
Go ahead.
I hit on this real quick. One thing that the 1x MNAV Ponzi bears don't conceptualize or even calculate is, like, have you looked at a DCA of MSTR, right? Everybody talks about DCA Bitcoin, right? DCA Bitcoin, then you don't even care about like what the price is. Why don't you just DCA MSTR in the same concept, right? And then you capture it on both MNAV, right? Like you're going to capture it when it's high, and maybe you capture it more when it's low, and you deploy more when it's low. All of a sudden, you're now got leverage, and you're hitting it on both sides of the curve. Like I can almost guarantee, I haven't run the analysis on it, but I can almost guarantee that also outperforms Bitcoin. I mean, MSTR has outperformed Bitcoin, just period, on almost every, way you can look at it. But even a DCA, if you think about a DCA approach, it's an easy way to think about it. Anyway, over to you, Adrian.
Yeah, so the reason why I have issues with MNAV is because I think it's a very lazy metric. People use MNAV because right now they don't know how to value strategy, right? I think, and that's why they fall back on MNAV. It's a very, very easy metric. It's a very easy way for them to conceptualize what strategy should be worth. And that's why, if you remember Kerrisdale back, what was it, in March 24, whatever?
RIP.
Yeah, they put out the whole report, and MNAV was their entire basis, basically, right? Another reason why I have an issue with it is because I'm looking at where the puck's going to be, not where the puck is. And the market right now, when it comes to strategy, is looking at where the puck is. They're not looking where the puck's going to be. Where the puck is going to be is they're going to be getting yield on their Bitcoin holdings. Bitcoin is going to be at 150, 200,000. They're going to be accreting more, getting more Bitcoin through various means. They're going to be having a much, much larger footprint in the market. As Bitcoin grows, their market cap is going to grow. You cannot, to Dan's point, predict what the MNAV should or will or would be under those conditions. And if you try, I think you're going to end up looking stupid. So the NAV is doing what it's doing now because the market is still making sense of this thing. Once they start finding ways to get yield on their Bitcoin, once they start finding different ways to monetize their Bitcoin, once they start bringing more products to market, and also once the adjacent products all around it, the leverage plays, the ETFs that are holding companies that hold over 1,000 Bitcoin, the ETF giving exposure to the converts, I think all of that changes the calculus on this very, very rapidly. And we're going to have an oh shit moment where we're going to have a rapid repricing, probably in the period of between 18 to 36 months. Is what I see. And my personal opinion is that is next cycle. I think we're going to do very, very well this cycle, but I think by next cycle, when we have the ETFs being more mature, when we have these products being more mature, I think that's when we see the real repricing, what strategy should be.
All of us working in Bitcoin full-time is not priced in. that is definitely not priced in. There's going to be so many products, right, Adrian? I mean, to your point, there's going to be so many products. The world just doesn't even know these things exist, right? Like imagine a world where you've like a traditional bond manager he wakes up, he gets his coffee, he goes to work, he buys his Microsoft bonds, he gets paid, he goes home, and like that's his life. And like they've got no reason to explore or do anything because they've made money in the existing system. That's just what they're doing. And then all of a sudden they're going to start losing their clients because they're going to these managers that are a little bit more on the cutting edge, and they're getting, 20% higher yield because they're investing in Bitcoin bonds and Mag 7 or whatever. And that's that repricing event. You're right. It's going to take so much time, right? Like, we know about Strike and Strife and we care about it because we're obsessed with it, but it's not going to even hit people's radar until they're included in the S&P 500, until this thing is trading at $2 trillion, right? Like I didn't really know about NVIDIA until it was like $1 trillion company. I'm like, holy shit, what is like, where'd this come from? I mean, that's going to happen to so many people with strategy, even more so because they're just ignoring Bitcoin. It's like all of a sudden you're going to see this $1 trillion publicly traded equity that's powered by Bitcoin, and people are going to freak out. But it might take a while.
Well, look at so if you look at between August 2020 to now, when they first got on this whole pathway, right? First, it was just MSTR. Now we have MSTU, MSTX, MSTY, ONB. We have BMAX. We have the options market that at times has had open interest rivaling that of NVIDIA. I really think that all the bears, I mean, they're cute and all, and it's going to be fun to look back on this. But until Bitcoin becomes systemically important, I think that we're going to have this same old conversation, right? But I do believe that there's a threshold marker, whether it's going to be 3 to 5 trillion for Bitcoin, right? Or whether it's going to be 6 trillion for Bitcoin, and then strategy is going to become the net benefiter of that kind of accretive growth in Bitcoin's price and market cap. When it becomes systemically important to the market in the sense of you have so many people playing it and it just starts to grow organically, that is when the repricing event happens. Until then, we're going to have to deal with the volatility, and the volatility is never going to go away, right? Yeah. I really don't think that's going to go away. But I do think that we will get to the point where we probably have another stock split, another 10-1 stock split, and I think that's a repricing event.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else? Soleil, I mean, any context there? How's your competition? Oh, Adrian, are you going to jump off?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. Awesome. Great to have you. Appreciate your context.
Adrian.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Yeah, I'm still getting hosed.
Getting your ass kicked. Okay.
Yeah, man. Oh man, when strategy was 340, I was licking my lips. I was like $5,000 down, and I'm like, yes, we just need 350, and I can breathe a sigh of relief. And then, of course, anything that you want to happen doesn't. So, MSTY since middle of January, that account is down 17.9%. And then I'm down 24.8%. So they're still winning, but I've just been adding a ton of leverage the whole time. And when you're down, what I think strategy was 360, 370 a share when I started the challenge. So, being down 20% leveraged isn't going to work out in the short term, but it should be fine as long as the cycle's not over.
Right. As long as the cycle's not over. And Dan, you might find this this piece of information interesting. So if Bitcoin ends Q2 at 130,000, okay, so was that 20% up on all-time high? Is that right? Something like that? About 20% up on all-time high?
Yeah, 20%. Yeah.
Strategy is going to post a $25 billion gain in a single quarter. And I think that's the Josh Mann, like, blow this thing out of the water perspective, right? Like if you post a $25 billion gain in a quarter, the whole market's going to say, what the fuck? Like where did this, you post a bigger gain than some of the top companies in the world in a single quarter. People are going to wonder, like, should I price this dollar of earnings the same as a dollar of earnings from some of these other companies? And that's what I'm here for, is that conversation, right? Like, are all of these earnings dollars between all of these companies treated equally? Should they be treated equally? How should they be compared? What's the longevity look like? What's the risk profile look like? What's, all of these different components? And that's what I'm here for.
Plus, have you ever thought about the value of the Bitcoin within each of these wrappers? Josh has used the term special Bitcoin for MSTR's holdings just because of the size and scope, plus the BI software underneath and AI adoption and everything else. And that really clicked something for me, because I was like, sure, you can pull up, some of these miners or Metaplanet or whoever else might jump into the game, even if Microsoft does with some of the cash in their balance sheet. But really looking at it from that perspective of what can each Bitcoin do, leverage through the ecosystem and the volume, that really changes how you value Bitcoin,
right,
in each wrapper as well. So
right, the tech component, which is just evolving over time, and what a lot of people are building and growing on. So yeah. Oh my God! Somebody just said QQQ did nothing for the share price. You're crazy. You're insane. Just look back in the last 7 months. Go ahead, Mason.
I think QQQ inclusion is represented in that MSTR IBIT
comparison.
chart.
Yeah.
When you see the step up, it was a blow off because everyone was front running everyone. We had Trump won the election, and that was supposedly bullish for Bitcoin. Saw that massive blow off top, and then it seems like we're coming down to a lower higher low.
Yes. Yeah.
Higher low. Trollstein, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious to hear your thinking around valuation and MNAV. Do you think you have any unique perspective, or what is your perspective?
In lieu of what I just said, as far as special Bitcoin versus normal Bitcoin?
Just general.
Yeah. As somebody that's not, out here talking the talk with us, right? You're watching what we do. I mean, you obviously built this badass website, but like, you clearly know what's going on. What's your general thought on valuation or MNAV, or what that looks like?
Yeah, I'm more in it based on the catalyst and specific timing of events. Dan and I have talked a lot just on the options chain and timing there, and various catalysts and front running or not front running, and how the market's going to react. So obviously there's such large macro at play with tariffs and everything that's happening now. So yeah, that's really been my perspective, is just on the specific timelines and leveraging out to specific options chains. So I know that's not what we're talking about here or discussing. Long-term valuation higher. We'll just
higher. Just easy, right? Yeah, it's easy.
Exactly.
It's got to go higher.
And the dollar cost averaging, like, that's there forever. I mean, I've got 401k, ESAs, IRAs, everything, and just keep stacking as much as you can on that. And I don't specifically try to time those buys based on any specific multiple or MNAV stat. It's just more, tariff sell-off. Okay, is there any dry powder to throw in here? I could care less what the actual MNAV is today or tomorrow. If the market's down and we have a 10% correction, like that's when I buy. So that's at least more of the trader perspective.
I think that's fair. This is something that Dan and I have talked about, is about you have trader brain and then you have long-term investor brain, right? And you sometimes need to reconcile those two things, and sometimes they contradict each other, where sometimes the market's getting a little hot and there's a part of you that justifies it because you're like higher, right? Higher. Like no one is seeing this. This is exactly, Tim, right? But then you have the trader part, which is thinking about other participants in the market and how they are valuing it. And a lot of people are looking at MNAV, and a lot of people are looking at all these different metrics, IV, all these different things, which sometimes tell you that it's too hot, right? And that, I have a bias I think we all have the bias for like long-term higher, but I think it's just an interesting predicament you're in as someone who is fundamentally long, but maybe also doing options or trading.
Yeah, and exiting covered calls during Bitcoin Investor Week too. Dan and I were talking about that. I think he exited a couple days before I did, but that was hard too, because we're watching all the data coming in. We're trying to time that trade. It goes against what we think's happening in building, but in the short term, you gotta create that cash off of those shares as well. So that worked out. Blow off top November, that was a different story. But as he said, all the data, the IV was all screaming a different narrative, and it's too caught in the catalyst. And I told one of my friends, I was like, everything I've been training for my whole life since 2017, getting into Bitcoin, it's all coming together in real time. This is it. Euphoria. And here we are, but ready to do it again. So lessons learned and more mistakes to be made, but we're in it.
Tuition's expensive in this industry, right? Like
Sure is.
tuition is it's probably the most expensive industry for tuition. So I mean, what happened in November was just, it was nothing like it has ever existed before. So it's really interesting. We're all learning in real time at the same time, trying to understand the market, get the pulse on the market. What are some metrics that can give us information? Like trying to communicate to everybody as fast as possible of like, am I positioned right? Do I position harder? Like, what does this look like? I don't think we've ever seen any company raise $17 billion in 40 days before on an ATM on their stock. Right, like that was much needed liquidity that was added to the market to help facilitate, this big run up of all these new shares coming in for QQQ. But that also prevented it from the stock falling too far, right? Like if they wouldn't have raised $17 billion in that time horizon and bought all this Bitcoin, the price of the stock would be maybe at 100, right? Like, or maybe below. And it would have crashed much lower. Maybe it would have gone much higher, but it would have came back down much lower. And so while that may have been good for everybody's call options, right? Like it probably wasn't the best thing for the long-term common stock shareholder, which is what Saylor has mentioned. He's like vehemently focused on is the long-term common stock shareholder. So I think it's good.
Which he is one, right?
Which he is one, right? Yeah. He's the largest. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the largest. So it's kind of helpful to always bring that back into perspective. And that he said that in the Q3 earnings call too. I think that was looking back, that was a really good piece of advice that he gave everybody right before he was about to turn this up to 100, right? Like, hey, just FYI, we're gonna blow this thing up, and just be prepared. So. Should we shift and talk GameStop, which I think is interesting? We got $1.3 billion convertible bond issuance that hit the market, and they exercised the green shoe option. So looking at a $1.5 billion potential Bitcoin buy, which is super exciting. Anybody else watching this? Anybody else seeing what's going on?
Wish Gran was here. Gran's got something to say about GameStop.
Yeah,
I listened to. He was playing options too on GME, right?
It's too early to tell. I mean, like at this point, I guess if they adopt a full-on sailor strategy, okay. But they have this legacy business that isn't software that they got to deal with, and then you've got their commitment to the strategy, and we haven't heard anything from Ryan Cohen. So I mean,
Silent.
make your bets. What was it? So
He's been silent. Yeah, he's been
yeah,
totally
he's been
silent.
silent. I mean, make your bets, but you just don't have any information. Like the reason we made bets on MSTR was because we thought we knew something other people didn't, or we thought we saw something in the market that other people didn't. Right now, we have the experience with MSTR, but we can't just go out and assume GameStop is going to become MSTR in the way
100%.
they're executing the strategy. By all means, like buy it, buy the calls, whatever. But it's just something I'm thinking about. I'm not touching it because I wouldn't have the conviction if we saw a 30% drawdown in GME before we went up. I wouldn't be able to hold those calls or even really the equity through that move. So that's why I don't touch it. I think we just need more. I personally, as an investor, need more information on that.
I think there's three things that you have to put a probability towards. It's their execution. Like, are they going to go full on Bitcoin treasury company? It's, will Bitcoin rip in the next, I guess, 6 months to a year in order to kind of catalyze the further growth, the further compounding of that execution? And then will the stock go lower in the meantime? If those, between those two things happening, and that's really what you have to decide and put probabilities towards. I think there is. I was listening to a podcast with Ben. I think he was on like Swan or something, and he's pretty confident that they're going to be able to execute and follow through on this, which might be his bias. I'm not sure, but I'm also leaning towards. I think they're more likely to actually do this than maybe the market is pricing in right now.
So they just raised $1.3 billion with a $200 million green shoe, and they cleared it all. What do you think they're communicating to the convertible bond market, right? Like they must, one, that's huge demand, right? It's huge demand for a company like GameStop, huge demand. And what are they signaling and what are they communicating to the market, right? There's a reason that the green shoe happened, and it's likely because they're going to slam it full of some volatility here on the horizon. So, yeah, I mean, we could be, if GameStop and Cohen do an announcement, I think that might, deploy some chickens to run around with their heads cut off, right? They're going to be like, oh my God, some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to ape Bitcoin because they're like, oh my God, GameStop's doing it. I got to buy Bitcoin too. And, that's going to be an orange pill moment for hundreds of thousands of people that own GameStop, is like, maybe I should learn about Bitcoin because GameStop just bought $1.3 billion of it, and they can't even conceptualize, $1 million. Now, like the company's buying $1 billion worth of it. So, I mean, communication and how they communicate to the retail market is going to be the most interesting thing here, right? Like Saylor is running around the market on every single podcast talking about Bitcoin. One, he's very clear. Yeah, Ben put in here, GameStop named it Project Rocket in there. They named it Project Rocket in their
I went to the filing. I was like, how did he find that? It was like 100 pages.
Yeah,
it was.
It's the header. Yeah, it's the header.
Oh, really?
Header.
Okay,
yeah, it's like on the
maybe
first
I just
page.
missed it.
Yeah, Project Rocket.
It gets lost in there.
Yeah, it's so true. So it'll be interesting to see if Ryan Cohen takes a similar Saylor strategy of like actually communicating to the market what he's doing. Here's what my plan is. Here's what we're going to continue to buy Bitcoin. We're going to adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy. If they issue preferred stock or preferred ETFs, I mean, or preferred stock or any similar type products, I mean, that would be the indicator that they are running a very similar Bitcoin treasury strategy. And the size and scale is really important too, because if they're buying $1.5 billion of Bitcoin, they're going to be the fourth or fifth largest holder of the publicly traded holder of Bitcoin right away. And all of a sudden, boom, now you're going to start getting included in these index funds that are a function of companies that hold these ETFs. And that's more capital passive flow. If they get included in the S&P 500, which they were included in the past, all of a sudden you're seeing a potential more passive index investment into the company. So
QQQ.
It's kind of this, yeah. QQ. Well, they're NYSE listed, so they'd have to delist.
okay.
They'd have to delist NYSE and go over to Nasdaq. But Palantir did that in like a month, and then their stock just continued to rocket when they got it added to QQQ as well. So it's possible. I mean, that would be the move that I would do, is right. Aim for S&P 500 inclusion, just continue to slam Bitcoin in the balance sheet, delist on NYSE, go over to Nasdaq, get the QQQ inclusion, and blast this baby through the roof.
Imagine if there's multiple Bitcoin treasury companies in the S&P 500.
Dude,
Like, what does that look like?
I wrote down earlier. Imagine a fleet of BTC treasury companies, all issuing preferred convertible stock at the same time in a bear market. And like all of a sudden, what is a bear market? Is there like, does bear market exist? Does market theory exist anymore? Is this just up forever? This is going. Tim's like, it's going up, man.
Insert
So-
gray in Arena cult.
Yeah.
That's what
Arena
I'll do.
cult. Yeah.
Yeah, what happens if like there's a statistic in the future that says every company that adopts a Bitcoin strategy gets into the S&P 500 in 5 years, or just something along those lines? Is just like this dominoes just start falling, and does that start like a mad scramble?
It could, right? I mean, it certainly could. You could see just a dash, right, everywhere in the market. I don't know. It's hard to conceptualize, but it's some really cool signaling in the market, right? Is seeing that this is happening. I mean, Metaplanet is also what Ben say. A fleet of these companies becomes a market downside shock absorber.
Yeah, is he jumping on or just
Mm.
tweeting?
He's in the background. He's doing some other shit tonight too.
Right.
So yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of signaling is happening. Oh, Metaplanet, they're getting 0% ordinary bonds for like 6 months, basically like a 0% interest rate credit card to like go buy Bitcoin and then clear it via warrants, which is basically a de facto ATM with a 1-day look back on options. So like the company that they're getting the 0% interest rate from is running their ATM strategy via warrants with a 1-day look back. So they're making, money hand over fist, issuing ATM. Metaplanet is effectively like diluting their shareholders, sometimes upwards of like 50% within a week. And the stock is still going up, right? They're just like arbing MNAV, and they're just adding Bitcoin, add Bitcoin, add Bitcoin, add Bitcoin. And I mean, this thing is just totally incredible. I think they're going to be a top 5 publicly traded holder of Bitcoin in like the next 12 months, probably.
Are there no bear species native to Japan or what?
There's just no bear species native to Japan. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, at least in the Bitcoin space. Yeah. I haven't looked incredibly closely at what their leverage ratio is, and I mean, probably should do some research into that. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they hold like 15,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year at the rate that they're going. They just closed a 96% Bitcoin yield in Q1 in a quarter, which is just nuts, totally crazy.
I can't wrap my head around who's selling them the freaking Bitcoin. Like, I don't understand how we're not at 150
Yeah,
a coin.
how does it just not go up? Like,
Yeah, like who's selling?
who's selling? OGs, maybe IBIT.
Yes.
Has there been outflows, or I haven't paid attention much on outflows on the ETF. So I would be curious, right? Because anybody that bought the ETF a year ago, let's think about this. You bought the ETF a year ago, Bitcoin was at 46, 50,
40, 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
50.
double their money, maybe.
you nearly doubled your
year.
money. And think if you have TradFi brain, if you nearly double your money in a year, what do?
Get out.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah.
sell, right? Like if you've got
On the first dip, like, oh, it went to 108 and now it's
now I'm
in
at
the 80s.
80.
Like, oh,
I'm going to go
guess I
pay my
gotta get out now.
taxes. I'm going to get out. I'm going to pay
Yeah.
my taxes and move on. So, I mean, I personally think we're probably going to go sideways until tax day, and maybe after tax day we see a little bit more bullish sentiment once people get past that kind of dollar hump. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I've got the chart pulled up here too. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like there's a lot in the February. Here, I can share it too. If you want to see that?
Yeah, let's check it out.
Yeah, just CoinGlass. Here's the spot ETF inflow and outflow. So you can really see here. This is like February 20th, 25th.
Big
Just
outflow in February, huh?
big
Yeah.
outflows, but still very green. It's quite the Christmas tree. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens this week with tariff craziness and just the markets. But
Wow, that's
Yeah.
that's crazy. Looking at the last year, yeah, right. So that very basic preliminary thesis that I just outlined there is like, right, you make 100%, or you make 50%, 75%. You basically made the returns for your entire portfolio for a year. You're like, okay, I rode the Bitcoin wave, I'm out, and I move on. And
Exactly.
wow, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, cool data. All right, well, we're hour 50 in here. It's probably good to wrap it up. Unless Soleil, you want anything?
Well, we
else?
didn't mention. Did we mention the app, the strategy
Oh
app?
shit! I mean,
Oh
so many things.
yeah, that's big
Yeah,
news.
new.
of the day.
Yeah, so I guess we could give them some free advertising, huh? Because they're our favorite stock. Yeah. Did they even announce it, or it's on the strategy website? Yeah. Go ahead. You want to talk about it,
Mason-
Soleil? Go ahead.
Jason tweeted out. Yeah. I was freaked out about it. I mean, it's downloaded the app, and of course, I'm on Android. Imagine the covered call seller is using Android. But yeah, I mean, just scrolling through all of the columns. I mean, all of the data is there. There was a weird thing. I don't know if this is just Android things, but I had to like double tap the line items with 2 fingers to get the tooltips to come up. So I don't know if Apple users are having that thing or if that's just an Android thing. But yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah. So,
Like, who
it's
has an
a
app?
new app, right? Yeah. Like what?
How many companies have apps?
How many companies have an app that just outlines their
Sherman
financial metrics?
Williams, maybe.
Big paint. I'm long
Big
paint.
paint.
Big paint. Sherwin-Williams probably does not have a app on their financials and their leverage ratios at all times. So
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's pretty much strategy.com, just as an app, as a native app on your phone, so you can see all that in real time. It's awesome. And they do make you sign in though, so I'm wondering what the data collection is for that. If we're all going to start getting newsletters or Bitcoin buy alerts, something, because I thought that was interesting. You don't have to sign on for the website, but on the app you do. So we'll see.
Huh. Interesting. They're just collecting our data, all our cookies and everything, whole thing.
We're plugged into their BI software
We're
now.
plugged in. They know everything about us. They've got the whole thing. Okay, so shall we do one more? I guess right before we end, we can look at our event here, do another little intermission. So we've got, as mentioned earlier, now twice into the podcast, we have MSTR True North Orlando, May 5th, 2025. So this is the Monday of Strategy World. We are going to have content. We are going to have a keynote. We'll have some networking from 10 to 1, keynote presentation, panel discussion, and a party that we're hosting from 7 to 9. If you're interested, click the link here. You can get tickets. There were 75 tickets to start with, and now there are only 36 remaining. So if you're planning to go to Strategy World, you want to come hang out with us and go check out MSTR True North World and our website, mstrtruenorth.org. Again, if somebody has the domain name, please reach out to me and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, for the .com.
For the .com. Yeah, for the .com.
We'll give you a free ticket to the event if you have the .com. So.
I'm sure we could do a little something better than that.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, they'll be sold out by tomorrow at this rate. Again, we started at 75. We're over halfway done during the live stream. A lot of people watch the recording later, 2x speed or whatever else. So they will be gone. So if you're on the fence, grab one now.
Yeah, grab it now. Come hang out. Cool.
For the newsletter at the bottom of the website, we've got over 100 people signed up already. I know Adrian was pinging us in the private chat here already, saying maybe you should do a newsletter on tariffs to send out next week. So who knows, maybe there will be some alpha straight from Adrian on that coming soon.
Yeah. So at the bottom of the website here, so at the website, which we outlined earlier, at the bottom, there's a, stay on course, get the signal. So please put in your email address, X handle or whatnot, join the list, and we will hopefully get a newsletter launched and out to market. And, we'll see exactly what that looks like, but yeah, looking forward to it. Good deal. All right. We'll go around final thoughts for everybody that's left. I know a bunch of people have peeled off. Maybe we'll kick it over to you, Tim.
We're heading higher.
We're going higher. We're going higher. Thank you for your orange tie and your not financial advice and hanging out. Tim is the hardest working man in Bitcoin. I'm pretty convinced. And what is it? It's past midnight there, and you're wearing an orange tie still and still in the office. So go get some sleep, Tim, and we will see you probably on your 10 million podcasts over the next couple of days. Awesome. Mason, over to you. Final thoughts.
I'm really excited about Orlando. I think it's going to be a blast. And I'm really excited to see some faces and connect with people in real life. Meet most of you for the first time in real life. And I just want to thank Dan again. Like the website's awesome. And I don't know, like the fact that you did that over a weekend is insane. And the fact that you're doing this for us is just beautiful.
Epic.
Just
Epic.
kind of, it's indicative of the larger community here, which I feel is really special and is continuing to grow and will continue to be something really special.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron. The community just continues to grow, and we're all helping each other. The coolest part about Bitcoin and the coolest part about Bitcoin is not a zero-sum game. It's not like Dan helps us and somebody else loses, right? It's like he's helping us, and we're all going in the same direction to a new, freedom money, towards freedom money. So I echo that sentiment.
Yeah, happy to get involved, and it's great to give back. Like I said, been Bitcoiner since 2017, since early 2017. And kind of first project in the space, and Bitcoin Investor Week was awesome meeting you guys and hanging out. So looking forward to many more.
Yeah.
Also, Peter Duan, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He just signed up.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty legit. He was our last one. Shout out to Peter. It's a good dude.
awesome. We got Peter joining. Dan, final thoughts? Anything else you want to add?
I think it's been covered. Yeah, just bookmark the site, check back often. Like we said, this is kind of a beta that we just all-nighters over the weekend, just got it out super quick. We'll have much more event info coming. I think we got 3 more events to add just from today, chatting with people. Where Tim's modding stuff, Jeff's speaking, Ben's speaking, whatever. So we'll add all those, and newsletters will start dropping. We'll just get a lot more formalized and organized. So that'll be the source of truth for all things MSTR True North. So happy to have everyone along for the ride.
Awesome.
So no know what's going on with my camera. Sorry.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan. You're not used to the podcast streaming, right? You'll get there.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
BTS. Soleil, over to you.
Yeah, Dan, the website is amazing, and with a handle like Trollstein, like that's just metal as fuck. So I shouldn't be surprised. It's just great work. I mean, the S&P 500 having to wait a quarter or two is disappointing, but my thesis on strategy hasn't changed. They're disrupting. They're the clear winner, and they have infinite food to eat. So exponential growth on the horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, last thing I've got. Yeah, I mean, Dan, incredible. This entire group is putting a ton of effort in. I think we're all working on some very, very big ideas that are going to surprise a lot of you once we start launching some of the things that we're working on. We are, I've been up till 2 a.m. like 3 nights this week just working on stuff. So there's a lot more to come, right? Like we're not just a website. We are a force to be reckoned with. And I think people are going to be a little bit surprised with some of the stuff that we got cooking. So yeah, stay tuned for all of that. I'm speaking at Bitcoin. What am I speaking at this weekend? So it's MIT Bitcoin Expo. So if you're in Boston, Massachusetts, check it out. MIT Bitcoin Expo. I'll be hosting a panel of 4 people that run Bitcoin, or 3 people that run Bitcoin treasuries, and then an asset manager at Fidelity. So we'll be cooking, talking about Bitcoin, chopping it up. I'll be there both days, Saturday and Sunday. So if you're around, come hang out. And I mean, Orlando's going to be a ton of fun. I think it'll be a great time meeting all the people there. Obviously, Strategy World, MSTR True North World on Monday. But Tim, myself, and Ben are going to be on the stage with Saylor on Wednesday at 4:30 p.m.
Amazing.
Which feel like it's coming full circle, right? I started with, Apple headphones plugged into my computer, just talking about strategy and what I think the company could become. And, about 15 months later, I'm going to be on stage talking to the guy. that's going to lead the largest company in the entire world, right? So it's apparently
Yeah,
you could just do things.
I got to screen share that too here.
Yeah.
So here we go. Strategy software. It's just awesome to see for the guys too, because we're Michael and Fong and Jeff and Tim and Ben. Like that's a sight to see. So make sure you check that out.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Very feel very honored to talk through that. I mean, the retail community, this is the way that equities are moving, right? Like that. Nobody's going to the Wall Street Journal for news anymore, right? Like nobody's waking up, getting their cup of coffee and going like, what's the yield curve doing today on the Wall Street Journal? It's like, no, like the booger that came out of Jerome Powell's nose on stage, right? Like, it as it happens. And like the world is just moving much faster, right? Like you got equities that are creating apps with their financials that are live, and just everything's moving much faster and decentralized, and nobody trusts any outside news agendas that are being pushed. So it's just incredible to see like the equities grow into this decentralized world, and I think we're moving a lot more that way.
Jeff, is Jerome's booger bullish or bearish?
I think it's bullish. I think that's
It's bullish.
Oh no, it's dovish. Yeah, it's dovish.
It's
Yeah,
dovish. Okay.
If Jerome Powell like picks his nose or he's got a booger or something, dovish for
Did you see
sure.
the poly markets on if he would
For
say
sure.
good morning or good afternoon or whatever else too? Like kind of
Good afternoon, just boom,
Yeah,
slam down.
changed immediately.
Yeah. Totally crazy. All right, well, we're at 2 hours on the nose, and thank you everybody for the time. Appreciate it. Episode 22. That's a wrap, and we will see you next week.
And we'll have this on the website tomorrow.
Yeah,
There you
it'll
go.
be up there. All right, take it easy. We're going
All right,
higher.
take care, guys.
All right, see you guys.